is it an attack on one of the NATO member allies? There is an Article 5, which entails that an attack on one country is an attack of all the countries. The Russian government has denied that it was their missile. But look, when you sent around 100 missiles into Ukraine and actually hitting Lviv region in the western part of Ukraine, what is the probability that there will be one day when you're actually going to hit Poland? I think that this is what would have happened. Of course, we'll have to see the confirmation of that. But look, I think the response of NATO should be very clear. I think NATO should step up its support for Ukraine, send long-range missiles and tanks, because the only response to this brutal Russian attacks on Ukrainian civilians has to be matched with more military assistance for Ukraine. But also Ukraine's energy system needs support now. We need power generators, we need electricity transformers, we need coal. We need all of that to survive the winter, because Russians are deliberately hitting the civilian infrastructure to make the life of common people unbearable and to put more pressure on the people.
What was the extent of the broader attack on Ukraine over the last 24 hours? You mentioned this, but go into a bit more detail for us.
Look, 7 million people have no electricity. Many don't have access to water and heating. We are already getting into sub-zero temperatures. Winter is coming. It's extremely difficult for civilians. If they don't have any alternative to where to stay. And you can imagine big cities which have over 1 million people. If you black it out completely, you stop not only electricity, but the supply of water stops. And then this place is unlivable and you have to move out. So I expect we're going to see a surge in Ukrainian refugees to Europe. There are already over 5 million of those in the EU countries, putting a great deal of pressure on the EU governments, but also a great deal of pressure on everybody. I think it's high time for G19 countries to side with the people of Ukraine, not with the war criminals. And it's unacceptable if there is a call on both sides. I think it's pretty clear who's the villain here. It's Russia, which is terrorizing Ukraine. It's Russia, which is sending their troops and their missiles into Ukraine. And it's important that G20 countries, as well as other countries, put more pressure on Russia to stop this war. Russians have to withdraw from Ukraine, and we have to restore our sovereignty.
There were Ukrainian celebrations over the last 3 or 4 days with the recapture of the regional city of Kherson. Do you believe this latest attack, this barrage over the last 24 hours, was Russia displaying what it can still do despite having lost Kherson?
Absolutely. As you know, Kherson was occupied for 8 months. Russia has announced that it's now part of Russia. We've been able to liberate Kherson, and you've seen how rejoicing people were over the weekend and what a celebration there was. And of course, it added up to the morale of the people. And here is the response. Russia sends over 85 missiles into Ukraine. And this is, they can't fight on the battlefield, but they can hit our infrastructure. And as you know, destroying civilian infrastructure is a war crime in itself. And Russia will have to be held accountable. Russia will have to pay for the damage they're inflicting upon Ukraine. And already there was a UN vote recently, which is creating a mechanism how we can impose cost on Russia and how we can make Russia pay for all this damage that they've inflicted upon Ukraine for the past 8 months.
So if Russia can still, like, you've pushed Russia out of much of eastern Ukraine, but Russia can still launch these attacks and hit Ukrainian infrastructure. What do you see for the future of this conflict and putting an end to this if Russia can maintain these long-range strikes?
Look, we fended off Russia in northern Kyiv back in April. Then later in early September, we've been able to repel the Russians from Kharkiv region. Now in the south, we've liberated Kherson. So Ukrainian troops are demonstrating strong capabilities and is actually demonstrating victories on the battlefield. And Russia is responding asymmetrically. They are destroying our civilian infrastructure. We have to carry on. The momentum is on our side. We have to get the right weapons and to be able to repel the Russians. And we have to carry on liberating Ukraine. And this is how I see the future developing. Russia withdrawing from Ukraine completely, we liberate Crimea, and we restore our sovereignty.
What's the progress on your request for another shipment of coal from Australia and energy infrastructure from Australia?
Look, there was just a discussion on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit, and I'm very thankful to Prime Minister Anthony Albanese that he took time to meet Foreign Minister in Cambodia. They had a very good discussion, and Ukraine's Foreign Minister made a request for more assistance from Ukraine on an energy side, on coal, on power generators, and Australia has already provided 70,000 tons of coal, which was delivered in July and was supplied to the power generation plants in Ukraine. But we need more of your coal to survive this winter. And we'll be very thankful for that support.